Department of Justice, when it comes to law enforcement, is independent. This is what we believe, and this is what the president has said. This is not about politicizing anything. That is not true at all. We do not interfere. We do not get briefed. The Department of Justice, again, when it comes to law enforcement matters, it is independent, complete independence, and I'm just not going to comment on that. None of us will, because we're going to let Merrick Garland speak for himself. And
even to this point, President Biden's not been briefed about anything.
Not been briefed. We have not interfered.
Not discussed it at all.
Not discussed.
Oh, sure. Joining me now, Margot Cleveland. She's the senior legal correspondent at the Federalist. And when I have questions about all this fancy law stuff, which I don't know anything about, Margot is pretty much the go-to. Margot, you have a 17-minute piece up on the Federalist, which I would encourage people to go watch, explaining this warrant and all this stuff. But we don't have 17 minutes. We have 10. I'm going to shut up and allow you to explain it to me now. If I interrupt, it's just because I'm stupid and I didn't understand big words. Go.
Right. So, first question I have from the clip is, why was Biden not briefed on this? They supposedly had all this top secret information they were concerned about, which is kind of the setup for the piece. Last week, I started looking at this and I'm noticing everybody's talking about top secret. And obviously when they went nuclear and said there was nuclear info at Trump's, I was like, that's kind of weird. Everyone's mocking that. I actually pulled the warrant. And what did we discover? The search warrant listed 3 different statutes as the basis for searching Trump's house. And it looks like you have those going up on the screen there. And what I did is I went to each one of those statutes and I said, okay, what do you have to prove? What's the violation? The first one is under the Espionage Act. And I went and did a bunch of legal research on it and discovered, hey, it doesn't have to be classified information. And in fact, sometimes it's something such as a company that has come up with a aircraft that the military is using. The Air Force, the government comes in and says, no, we need possession of that because it could harm our defense if the bad guys get it. So it actually doesn't have to do specifically with spying, selling secrets. So the first one dealt with a Defense Act violation and had nothing to do with classified information. So I'm okay, let's go and look at the next one. The next statute dealt with possession of government information. Again, didn't have to be classified. So again, I'm thinking, why is the media talking about all these classified documents that are supposedly at Trump's? And relatedly, Trump's folks are coming back and saying none of it was classified. I'm thinking, well, what does this have to do with anything? So I looked at that. And then the third one was obstruction of justice. And that really kind of wrangled me because I'm thinking, what's that supposed to be in this case? How does that tie into the search? So I was kind of noodling on this, figuring out what does this have to do? And I realized this whole classified information, top secret information, it's a red herring. Then I remembered, how did Crossfire Hurricane happen? You had the FBI, the DOJ working with the media, giving them leaks. And another thing that was kind of funny from your clip is, we're going to let, the Attorney General talk. And what did he say? We're going to let the court filings talk. But what did the New York Times and the Washington Post say? Our sources told us. So I'm looking at that and I'm seeing them talk about a grand jury and subpoenas and documents. So I started doing research and I got all the way back to January and February. And I discovered that the search actually originated way back in January when Trump left the office and realized, hey, there's something called the Presidential Records Act. And there were some really great folks on Twitter who really understood this. I actually tried to do some research on it and get a handle on it. And the Presidential Record Act talks about all official papers belong to the government. And when a president leaves office, they go to the possession of the National Archivist. There's some acronym that stands for it, but there's a head archivist in DC who their office takes control of it all. And on the other hand, there are personal documents. So maybe there was a letter from Trump to a friend of his that had nothing to do with the presidential operations, and he gets a letter back. That's Trump's to take with him. So I started reading this. Back in February, there were leaks that said Trump had taken material covered by this Presidential Records Act, which means it's supposed to go to the archivist and it's supposed to be the Americans' information. It's for the Presidential Library. Then there was another leak that said some of that was top secret and they passed it on to the Department of Justice for an investigation. It continues on with a leak that there was a grand jury that issued subpoenas to get this information. So all of this really started back in January. And as I'm doing this, I'm discovering more about the archivist who retired, I believe it was April 30th. And he specifically said that he retired because he didn't want to wait and figure out what was going to happen with the next election. He wanted Biden to replace him, which is an awfully weird thing for basically a librarian to be concerned about. And then he also talked about when Trump was leaving, he saw Trump carrying a box to the helicopter when he was leaving after Biden was inaugurated, when he was leaving for the last time. And he literally said, I'm thinking, what the hell's in that box? What kind of bureaucrat is concerned about the president taking a box? He also went on the record saying that January 6th was the worst day of his life. So it kind of gave you a little perspective here. But add to that, that when Hillary Clinton used a private server, destroyed emails that under another statute belong to the American public, are supposed to be preserved. Grassley's office asked him, did you investigate this? And he said, we left that up to the State Department. We're going to let them handle this. So what happened here? He gets back information that includes things marked classified. He goes running to the Department of Justice. What does the Department of Justice do? It launches a criminal investigation against the former president of the United States, uses a grand jury, gets subpoenas to demand documents, and eventually, months later, raids his presidential home. This has been in the works since January. The investigation was triggered over this Presidential Record Act investigation. If you read, I think it was Newsweek, they also had a source that claimed that they told the FBI that Trump had documents that were not turned away. If you read it carefully, the whole fight is about supposedly having records under this Presidential Record Act. If you go back to January and February, when the articles are first coming out, again, it's all about these documents. Nothing to do with classified documents, doesn't have to do with the top secret documents. That's not the problem. It's this idea of these presidential records. Now, I want to point something out, Jesse. Besides that, you have the Obama situation. Now, Trump was saying, hey, well, what happened to all of those documents Obama had? Yeah, Obama had the documents, but they weren't technically in his possession because his foundation worked with the archivist in order to arrange for them, including classified information, to be kept at Hoffman Estates in a Chicago suburb. So we have examples of how the government handles it when they are not on a witch hunt. They work with the former president.
Man.
If there is a concern about documents that have not been preserved, they work with whatever the agency is. They don't go to the Department of Justice. And if you look at those statutes, all of this talk about classification and top secret, it's a red herring. That is not the concern. The concern or the basis for the search is a violation of 3 other statutes. And the obstruction one, I have to wonder, was the grand jury a setup to get the obstruction? So they subpoena something and Trump's like, no, that's not a government record. That's a private letter to me. I'm not turning it over. Bam, obstruction of justice. Is that what they were doing? Why they were using a grand jury?
Don't miss Jesse Kelly Breaks History, Che Guevara, the latest episode of a new series available now exclusively for First TV supporters. Visit the First TV app or thefirsttv.com to subscribe and start watching today.